Hello, Klavier here.
And angelrin89.
With another Topic of the Week video. In this one, we're going to be talking about Ace Attorney, specifically the prosecutors of the various games. This topic was submitted by Tumblr anon, and their topic is your honest feelings about the prosecutor characters in Ace Attorney. Edgeworth, Manfred, Franziska, Godot, Klavier, Blackquill, and Nahyuta. What impact did each of them leave on the franchise to you? Any favorite and least favorite out of them? Memorable moments or lines from them? Have you had your opinion change about a prosecutor over the years? Okay, so I had to bring in Angelrin for this because, well, you were screaming that you wanted to talk about all the prosecutors.
I literally begged him. I was like, please, I want to talk about it.
So yeah,
because we've had conversations about prosecutors, but especially one in particular. Yeah, we'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah,
we've had actually two of them now that I think about it, like two right there that we had very extensive conversations in private where I thought, and I was like, ooh, can I come in the video? Can I come in the video, please?
Yeah.
Because then I could just bring it. But,
well, and we've both been fans of Ace Attorney for a long time. So.
Well, he has.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been a fan since like 2011 or so when I started playing the games.
Ironically, I started playing in 2016. Fitting.
Yeah. But
I will say this for Ace Attorney, at the very least, even though there's always the theme of having a new prosecutor for every game, at least they have such a wide variety of different characters. Like, no matter, because I know everybody has their opinions. Like, because, I mean, it's going to be no spoiler. I'm not going to say it yet who the favorite prosecutor is. But chances are, if you're an Ace Attorney fan, you probably already know who it is because it's the same for, like, practically everyone. But I digress. And I'm like, it's like, but when it comes to least favorites and when it comes to, like, secondary favorites, there's always a debate.
Yeah.
But what a different range of characters.
Yeah, it's funny because we were going over this, just sort of prepping for this topic, and we're looking over the different lists, and it was like, because we were actually realizing that there was, you know, a different, like, I hadn't really thought about who was my favorite to least favorite until we were, like, hashing out a list to talk about this. I'm like, yeah, you know, it's like, I like that prosecutor more than I thought I did, and I'm like, I didn't like them as much as I thought I did. Well, so... yeah, you know, without further ado, let's get into this. So we'll be going through each of these and talking about all the stuff and the parts of the topic for each prosecutor as we go through them.
Like, you know, favorite moments, favorite lines,
the impact they had,
impact, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert to something that's not really a spoiler because it's so obvious. Because if you're an Ace Attorney fan, who is our favorite?
Edgeworth. I mean. It's funny because it seems so cliche to say that the first prosecutor that we met is the favorite, but
and also the most popular like prosecutor, because if literally every person you've ever talked to an Ace Attorney, they'll say, who's your favorite prosecutor, or even who's your favorite character in Ace Attorney.
A lot of people will say Edgeworth.
They're like, Miles Edgeworth. I mean, he got 2 spin-off games dedicated to him. He's so popular.
And he was one of the first characters to come back after the absence in the new trilogy.
In fact, Shu Takumi? Isn't that the name of the...
Shu Takumi, the guy
who created at least the trilogy games. He rewrote the entire second game because he didn't realize how popular Edgeworth was, and that's why he created Franziska. Because
he didn't want to have Edgeworth
constantly losing because he's supposed to be a prodigy. And he's also so popular. But then this also created a theme of
introducing
nearly every single game. Well, not only just the theme of introducing a group prosecutor, and nearly every single game, barring Apollo Justice, at least the main games that Phoenix is starring in, or that Phoenix is in. Again, with Apollo Justice is a little bit different, but nearly every single game, Edgeworth always appears in some capacity in the last case of the game. Like it's like here and like special guest Edgeworth.
And even in the DLC case for Spirit of Justice, he also comes in and plays a role in that too.
That's a great case.
Yeah, it's also they brought back Larry, so you know you have to have Edgeworth and Larry there too. But
the trio.
But I mean, obviously, like, I think we're talking about this here, but he had the biggest impact out of all of the characters. You know, he obviously had such a big impact on the fandom and of all of the different games because he's important to Phoenix's backstory. He's important.
Well, and his own backstory ties in to Maya and Mia's backstory because of the same case that affected his life affected their life. So even though, granted, he doesn't interact with Maya a whole lot, it's so That's another interesting layer. You're like, oh, because you were told all about in the first game the DL6 incident just through Mia and Maya and learning about like that, and then you find out, oh, this big case that ruined their lives because of it caused their mother to go missing, and it's the reason what inspired Mia to become a defense attorney in the first place. But it was so interesting. Then okay, so the rival prosecutor that you've been playing against this whole game, the whole case that affected both your mentor and your assistants' lives and ruined their lives is tied to him. And then you're like, oh wow. And then you wonder, how deep does this rabbit hole go?
Yeah.
And it makes it even more fascinating as you're learning the mystery.
And even when you're Franziska is directly connected to
Edgeworth.
To Edgeworth. Edgeworth is connected to Manfred.
Yeah.
And and even then, especially when you get to the new trilogy and you find out that he's become the chief prosecutor, says he also has much more power and influence in the new trilogy, or in the second trilogy, because he's because of his new position. So.
Well, and it's such a natural fit for him. Like, even though I always love Edgeworth, the prosecutor, I do think that is a natural evolution for Edgeworth, because if he's become all about wanting truth, and like in the law, like genuine 100% truth. Like, even if his truth isn't going to coincide always with Phoenix's truth, he's all about like instead of like corruption, he just wants to get to the truth of the matter. Like, let's expose the truth. Like, is somebody guilty or is somebody innocent? We'll find out in court, and he just genuinely believes that, and it
makes sense that he would have now a position of power over the other prosecutors.
So now he can influence others, and one could even argue, granted you don't know, but I've had people talk about like they've had headcanons, and I'm like, that would make sense for maybe that's the reason why Klavier is not so hardcore, always wanting to win against Apollo. Like, if suddenly it looks like that the defendant actually is innocent, you'll notice Klavier will start to actually back off and like kind of be a graceful loser about it. And then a lot of people theorize, well, maybe
this is the influence of Edgeworth.
Like, maybe by that point Edgeworth probably became a chief prosecutor, and he probably was an influence on a younger Klavier. Because if he is a little bit different from whenever you see the flashback case from 17 years old to when he's older. But we'll get to Klavier when we talk about him. But that's a fan theory and a headcanon, but it's one that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And I'm like, okay, so I could see that, and I could see Edgeworth like being the influence, and he's purged like a lot of like corrupt prosecutors, like, and it makes me wonder, maybe that's why we don't see Winston Payne anymore.
Yeah.
And that's probably why his brother is no longer.
He went to Korean.
Yeah, he went to Korean instead in Spirit of Justice after Dual Destinies. And I'm like, but Edgeworth is such an interesting character. Like, what's there to say about him? Everybody, and every Ace Attorney list, like when people talk about their favorite cases, you'll always have a case that involves somehow Edgeworth coming in there.
Well, and I do think that one of the best
or favorite characters, Edgeworth is always in a top 10 list.
Yeah.
If he's not number one, he'll at least be in the top 5.
Yeah.
Like, and you've all seen these on YouTube. Like, if you've ever looked at any of top 10 like Ace Attorney anything lists, because Edgeworth is always brought up. Like, what is there that we can say about Edgeworth? I mean, I guess we could talk about our personal experiences playing the game, but that's really all we can do, because
Edgeworth's impact is obviously evident. He got 2 spin-off games. I mean, that's really all you need to say of his popularity.
Capcom, give us the second game.
Please localize it.
Somebody, like, fans already did the work for you.
Pay them and slap it on the
cartridge. Slap it on, and at the very least, make it an eShop thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, your experiences. Let's go with you.
You know, I remember when I was first playing the first game years ago, and you get to Edgeworth, and it seems like he's just a douche. It's like, I looked at you and
I want to punch you.
And then you get to once you get to the final case, and you realize basically all the stuff that happened, all the stuff in DL6, and it's like, oh, and you realize and you meet Manfred, and you see the guy who molded him into being the douchebag he is, and you.
Well, even then, even a little bit before that, you kind of do slightly start to feel something for Edgeworth, because of the Steel Samurai case, at least at the very end, whenever he realizes, oh, okay, this chick, Dee Vask, she's actually the guilty party, and he's actually trying to help you nail her. And that's shocking.
Yeah.
Like, at least at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Edgeworth obviously still has a good heart to him, but he was just twisted by Manfred over the years. But that's why you can see ultimately he does end up going against that teachings of him, that he ends up becoming,
his character development.
And his character development,
is
that's what made people love him.
amazing. I like to jokingly say, because people will say, name a better character redemption arc than Prince Zuko. I'll wait. And granted, people will always jokingly bring up other characters, especially characters from Dragon Ball Z.
Like Vegeta and Piccolo.
Nearly every single one of them from Dragon Ball Z. Because of everybody that isn't Bulma and Goku at some point have fought Goku. But that's a completely different topic. But I'm like, I always wanted to like put on the post, Miles Edgeworth. I'm like, because his arc in the course of just one game was such a great thing to watch, and especially Rise from the Ashes. Like whenever you just see like him having to deal with the guilt, the aftermath of the whole case with Manfred von Karma. Like, and you just see, and some people were like, oh, well, it contradicts what we've learned later in, Justice for All. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it slightly retconned the fact that, yes, Edgeworth at least never forged any evidence, at least not knowingly, because of that would be mostly Damon Gant, and unfortunately, because she was Blackquilled, Lana Sky's fault, because he unknowingly had in the past. And I'm like, but still, I'm like, yes, so he is a bit corrupt because of Manfred brainwashed him, but he never knowingly forged evidence. And I'm like, and I never minded that retcon because I liked it because it explained a little bit more. And you could see how it would transition into Justice for All, like how he felt so lost. Because when you play Rise from the Ashes, you could feel how lost Edgeworth felt. Like, he just felt so completely lost. Like, he said multiple times how he was, like, going to put in his resignation. Like he was, like, going to just quit. Like, being a prosecutor. Like, you could just tell, like, he lost his sense of purpose. And he didn't know, he couldn't see where he could go from there because of he based his whole life on a lie. And then it's like, well, now what do I do?
It makes sense that it leads to the prosecutor Edgeworth chooses death. And instead of, he really should have just said prosecutor Edgeworth chooses an extended vacation.
You couldn't know. I love Edgeworth, but my man, you were so extra. Such a drama queen. Would it have killed you to tell, like, Franziska and Phoenix wouldn't have been so pissed off if you at the very least told them, hey guys, I need to do a little soul searching, so I'm gonna go tour Europe for a little bit, find myself, maybe, like, learn a bit more about other courts and other countries and stuff like that. Get some different perspectives.
No, chooses death. I died. I basically just committed suicide.
Find myself. No, I'm gonna convince everybody I died. I'm just...
that was the best plot twist in
plot twist, except his face is on the cover of Justice for All with Phoenix and Maya and Francesca.
Prosecutor Edgeworth is dead. And this is literally like, was it the second case where they revealed him that he was, just like sitting in an airport? Like,
yeah, he's sitting in the airport talking to Gumshoe, and like the whole game they're like talking about, the mystery of Edgeworth, and Phoenix is just like, so he's just like, Maya, that man is dead. I no longer want to talk about him.
Stop telling people I'm dead.
No, it's more of Francesca's over there. Stop telling people you're dead, and Edgeworth is like, no, I'm dead. You're not dead. You fool. Edgeworth. But that was still a very memorable moment.
Yeah. There's a lot of memorable moments. Like when you start off the final case in the first game and you see Edgeworth holding the gun.
Oh my gosh, because I remember because he's played Ace Attorney. And I finally decided to get into it, because I have this one friend who's always begged me for years, I should play Ace Attorney. She's like, it'd be a series you'd love it. I'm like, someday maybe, whatever. And then I was actually playing Project Cross Zone 2. And in that game, Phoenix and Maya do appear in it. And just like, I instantly fell in love with those two. And I was just like, that's it. I'm getting Ace Attorney, and I bought the first 3 games as well as the Miles Edgeworth spin-off investigation game. So the fact that there was a Miles Edgeworth spin-off investigation game, that immediately told me, oh yeah, Edgeworth died.
Well, even going in blind to Justice for All, I mean, I was just sitting there laughing. I'm like, Edgeworth is too popular to die. And then, of course, he's just sitting in the airport talking to Gumshoe. I'm like, well, duh!
But yeah, I mean, I went in blind. Funnily enough, I went in blind for a lot of stuff about Ace Attorney. I mean, I knew I knew of Phoenix, and I knew of the memes, like objection, hold it, stuff like that, and the boot to the head. Everybody knows boot to the head. I knew of his later assistants / attorneys, Apollo and Athena, who would eventually come along, because I always saw them on my dashboard, especially when Dual Destinies came out on Tumblr. I knew of, funnily enough, even before I played the game, I knew of the two things that in Apollo Justice, Phoenix gets disbarred for being wrongfully accused of forging evidence because he was framed of that, and the other big plot twist that Trucy and Apollo are siblings. I knew that before I even played the trilogy games, because it was everywhere, and I didn't even play the games, but it was everywhere.
Well, funnily enough, I was actually spoiled to that too before I played the first game, because when Apollo Justice came out, like, that was all that anyone talked about. Phoenix was disbarred, and then, then I remember for a while when the game first came out, there was
people that shipped Trucy and Apollo.
And then I remember, like, a month later, it just died, disappeared, nothing up, and I thought it was like, oh well, I guess they're siblings.
It's like, oh, so this is a Luke and Leia situation, obviously.
Yeah. Everyone just like threw it away and pretended they
no one speaks of this.
I mean, I figured that out, and I think that everyone knows that at this point because that's a late arrival spoiler.
Oh yeah, but like, so funnily enough, I knew a little bit more about Apollo than I did about Phoenix. So for that, I went in completely blind, and as I was playing the game, I was getting into it, and I was kind of live blogging it on my Tumblr so he could see I was getting into it.
Yeah, and I was watching, I'm like, yeah!
And then I remember, right as I'm like because I was playing on my DS, and I was like, and I'm staring right at the moment in Edgeworth's shocked face, holding on the gun. I was sitting there, and I was like, what? And then I had to take a picture of that, and then I posted it on my Tumblr, even with my screen cap, and I'm like, I am losing my mind! What is going on? And then they were just like,
yes, you're at that case.
Him and like two of my other friends were like, you're finally at the case! You're finally at the case! Like they were like, I'm like, apparently whenever I said I was starting Ace Attorney, and they were like, everyone's like, we were waiting with bated breath until you got to the 4th case. And I'm just like, I'm losing my mind. Oh my, like it was such a like moment, like I can't even describe, like whenever I started to replay it again this year, like all the original trilogy games, and oh, like what a rush playing it again, because even though I'll never get back that experience of like being blown away the first time, but I will still always remember that feeling. Like, it is such an amazing feeling. Like, oh, what a rush. Like, just first the shock of seeing Edgeworth holding the gun, and you're just like, what the heck happened? What the heck? What the heck? What the heck? And then as you just dive deeper into the rabbit hole and you just find out more mysteries and how deep it goes, and you're just like, the whole case was just incredible.
Yeah. And then I think another one of my favorite moments with Edgeworth was when you're playing Dual Destinies and you get near the end of the game, and then Edgeworth, the cutscene plays, Edgeworth just bursts in, he's just like, surprise me, I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
I mean, still looking the same, but he's got a much
he's got glasses.
But he's got glasses like his dad now.
It's like, and that's what I noticed, I'm like, oh, he's wearing glasses to look like his dad.
I'm like, aw. But at the same time, like, looking spiffy.
But he's got the longer coat because the differences with him are minor. It's hilarious.
He's very dramatic. But yes, when he does come in Justice for All, like, yes, that phone conversation, I'm like, oh yeah, see, told it, knew you weren't dead. But the fact that so Maya gets kidnapped. You're in the last case of the game. Maya gets kidnapped. Phoenix is like gonna go to court, and then he gets a call from Shelly the Killer saying that he got him a present, and then Phoenix is like, what do you mean? And then the transmission cuts off. Phoenix goes into the courtroom, and then suddenly he hears from Gumshoe that Franziska was just shot. Like, granted, she's okay, but she was shot and sent to the hospital. And then that's whenever Mia is standing next to him, she's like, I get the feeling this is what he meant by your present.
Yeah. And
then you're just like, oh my gosh, the rival prosecutor, Franziska von Karma, just got shot. Like, what's gonna... And then suddenly Edgeworth shows up, and then you're just like, Edgy!
This turned into a happy moment.
Like, because you're excited. Edgeworth's back. He's back to prosecute, and you're just like, oh yeah, good times. And I'm just like, oh, it was great. Good times. That was great. Or whenever he comes in, and I still love when he comes in Trials and Tribulations. Like, what a great moment. this is before you're playing investigation. So for the very first time in a game that's starring Phoenix Wright, you're playing the game from somebody else's perspective, for at least for a brief period, from Edgeworth's perspective. And it was such an interesting thing, because you have to also investigate as Edgeworth. You have to...
And he's got his logic.
Well, that's not brought in until investigations, but still. But, like, so you're investigating as Edgeworth, and then you're in the courtroom as Edgeworth, and it's Edgeworth versus Franziska, and my gosh, that was so funny.
And he's using the Magatama for the first time, like, what in the heck is a psycho-lock?
Psycho-locks. Well, and I just love it because of, like Edgeworth suddenly shows up at the detention center. Like, that's how it starts off. Like, Edgeworth is like, because after this, the emotional roller coaster of, like, oh, Maya is trapped. Lightning struck the bridge. It's on fire. Phoenix is thinking to himself, Maya's trapped over there. I gotta get over there. I gotta save her. And then everyone's just like, Phoenix, no. Like, I think Larry was even with him. He's like, Phoenix, no. Like, the bridge is on fire. And Phoenix is like, no, I gotta help Maya. And then he, like, tries to run across the bridge and then falls. And you know, because of a previous case, because another flashback case is Mia, you realize, oh, that's the same bridge.
Oh yeah, that was a big moment when I was playing Trials and Tribulation. And you realize from the original flashback case at the beginning of the game.
But you know from that case, because they talked about heavily from that case, that several people have fallen off that bridge and died. So then you're thinking in that moment,
did Phoenix just die?
You're like, oh my gosh, Phoenix! And then suddenly, the case immediately switches to Edgeworth's perspective at the detention center, and you're like, oh my gosh, is Phoenix okay? And you're like freaking out, because one, you're happy because, wow, Edgeworth, but then you're like, oh my gosh, we have to play from Edgeworth's perspective?
Edgeworth is like my city now.
and you're like, oh my gosh, is Phoenix going to be okay? And then he's at the detention center, and Edgeworth, all he gets is an abrupt call from Larry, like, you need to get here now, like, it's an emergency. And then Edgeworth is just like, the fact that Edgeworth chartered a jet, like, immediately home is hilarious in of itself, because of Larry kind of left a lot of details out. So it's just like, it's an emergency, but at the same time, you think Edgeworth would keep like, wait, it's Larry, and an emergency could literally be anything, and I could literally be wasting my maybe $1,000 just jumping here probably for something like, is this outfit, like, is it making me that edgy? And he'd just be like, really? Like, but no, he immediately shows up, so I'm like, oh, what a good bro. And then there's Larry just like, my Iris is innocent, she's innocent. He's just like, you gotta help. And then Edgeworth's like, what are you talking about? And he's just like, Nick, he's in the hospital. And Edgeworth is just like, what? And he's just like, yeah, he fell off a bridge into like a river. And Edgeworth was like, what? And just like, what happened? It's just like, I go on a trip to Europe, leave you guys alone for a couple of months, and Phoenix nearly dies?
But then he turns out to just...
Oh, but he's got a cold, so whatever. I'll never understand that. But that's neither here nor there. But just, like, you're like, wow. And then suddenly, and then Larry's like, Nick told me to give you this because you gotta help. You gotta defend Iris. He's like, defend? What do you... And then he hands the Magatama and Phoenix's own, like, attorney badge to Edgeworth. And Edgeworth is like, this won't fly. I'm a prosecutor. And then Larry's like, oh, no worries, it's all good. It's like, Nick told me, like, just the other month, some other guy pretended to be with nothing but a cardboard badge, and it was all good. And then Edward's sitting there like, what has happened to the courts while I've been gone?
The dark age of the law.
It's always been the dark age of the law, but whatever. But
yeah. Edgeworth is still one of the most beloved characters.
Just investigating that case and just being in court, like, against Franziska as Edgeworth, like, oh, that was so memorable. Like, just Edgeworth versus Franziska. It was such a short moment, but what a wonderful moment. You could tell, like, it was just catharsis for Franziska, like, to be like, because you know she wanted to come back to face against Phoenix, but the reason she wanted to face against Phoenix is because of, because he's the man that defeated Edgeworth, so it's just like, so if I defeat Phoenix, then that means I'm better than Edgeworth. And I was like, but instead, it's Edgeworth himself, so you know, in her eyes, she's just like, yes! She's like, this is better! Even though still, she wants to beat Phoenix, but oh, it's such a good case, like, just oh, so memorable. And just, when he comes back into Destinies. Or, like, whenever you get to, like, investigate with Edgeworth in Spirit of Justice. That was great, too. Because of...
He was there for the whole last case.
I'm like, granted, as people pointed out, Edgeworth's whole purpose of being in that game was to show up for fan service and to be there to charter the jet so everybody could fly to the country to just pay the bill. It's like, I'm like, well, at least he had the DLC case.
He's the rich friend that everyone relies on.
But and all the lines from Edgeworth, and that's not even getting into the investigation games.
Yeah.
Like, even though, granted, I've never played the second game, but I love the first investigations game.
Yeah. Loved that one.
Fans seem to be lukewarm to it, which I don't understand, because they're like, the second one's better, which I'm like, okay, I've never played the second one, but at the same time, they act almost like the first one is terrible, and I'm like, or just average, and I'm like, I had so much fun playing Investigations.
Literally, the only thing I didn't like was Lang.
Well, yeah, and again, which is why we need Investigations 2, the big brunt of all of his character development happens in the second game!
The one that we don't have in America.
And I'm just like, I want to like Lang, but I don't have any context because I haven't played the second game!
Yeah.
But again, that's neither here nor there. That's another topic. But, okay, yeah. Obviously, Edgeworth has left a huge impact, but some of his lines, like sometimes I always purposely, like if Edgeworth is ever the prosecutor, I'll sometimes purposely, even if it sometimes gives me a penalty, so long as I don't have a low bar going on, I'll choose like the wrong answer completely because if Edgeworth always gives the most hilarious snarky responses back to like just utterly humiliate Phoenix. So I'm like, what a good friend.
You also can't forget his classic no.
Yeah, his infamous no, which is like no.
There's like a Y and a G in there.
And H's and just overly long.
Like
and
12 O's.
And his love of Steel Samurai, like his closet love of it.
No, I remember in the first Investigations game when someone breaks into his office and fires and knocks his old coat off the wall that he has, framed. And he like if you investigate his office and you check the Steel Samurai figure that he has, he'll be like, "Oh, thank goodness, this is completely undamaged." And it's like that was the one thing he was concerned about.
And he was all excited meeting Will Powers. Or like whenever you get to the last case of the first Investigations game, and he's just like the Steel Samurai, and internally he's geeking out, and then you find out it's Larry, and then he's just like.
He's crushed. He's angry. He's furious.
He's like, you have no right to wear that. And then it gets even worse when you have Old Bag as the Pink Princess. Edgeworth is a great character that's the comically serious because he's so serious, but he lives in such a nonsensical, stupid, crazy world. I mean, even he has his weird little quirks, like how he's like a closet fanboy of the Steel Samurai, or his love of his cravat, or the fact that it's almost a joke, the fact that he's so stuck up and just serious, like that's kind of a joke.
He's like sort of posh British, but he's not British.
He's not.
He's American who was raised in Germany.
Except, and by American we mean Japanese.
Well,
who was raised in America.
I love the AU, the English localization.
Oh man, just. But yeah. But, oh gosh. Oh yeah, another thing was, whenever, speaking of trials and tribulations, going back to that, whenever you're Mia, and then you get that flashback case, and then suddenly it's like, and then Diego is telling Mia, he's like, no worries, I know you're a newbie. He's like, but don't sweat it. The prosecutor's a newbie too, and younger than you, so I'm sure you'll be fine. And then
it's Edgeworth.
And then you see it's Edgeworth, and then everyone's just like, oh!
Oh gosh, I hated Edgeworth so much in that case because
he was so much worse than he was whenever you meet him in the first game.
He particularly he's imitating Manfred so much.
He's
like
even doing the sprites like that Von Karma did.
And I was like, ugh.
And even his outfit is a red palette swap of Manfred's outfit, like just so over the top gaudy.
Yeah, it was just like, Edgeworth, I'm so glad you got better.
But at the same time, it's humorous to see Edgeworth like that. Like, I'm like, oh wow, you were worse. I'm so glad for character development. But at the same time, it was almost humorous how much of a smarmy jerk he was. And you were right there with me, and like, I really want to slap that pompous little brat. And as everyone jokingly called that version of Edgeworth, they're like, Bratworth. oh, I could just go on. Edgeworth is such a memorable character. He's got such memorable lines too. Like, well, whenever he gives that line at the end of Justice for All, where he talks about the truth, like his whole monologue about the truth and finding the truth in the court and how important it is and blah blah blah. Like, yeah, that's a cool, nice, dramatic moment. But I love Edgeworth's snarky moments, like, or whenever he's just so blunt, and he doesn't mean to be blunt, he just is. Like in the Turnabout Airlines, I think it's called, from Investigations, and there's Rhoda, and she's got that really gaudy like suitcase that she designed.
Suitcase.
But then she's just like, wouldn't you want one, Edgeworth? And like, Mr. Edgeworth, and she's like, wouldn't you want it? And he's just like, no, I actually don't want it. And then she's just like, oh, she's like, I get it. She's like, you were just humoring me, or blah blah blah. Like, she like kind of gets all huffy, and like she keeps assuming the wrong reason, and he's trying to not say that he finds it ugly. He's trying to think to himself, how do I let her down gently, like that I don't want this ugly thing, and then eventually he's just like, how should I put this? It's hideous. And then you just see her instantly just. Like suddenly she just looks so depressed. She's just like, oh.
How do I put it lightly? It's ugly. Yeah.
Well, not just ugly. It's hideous. Like just like such a more like negative connotation than even ugly. And then Edgeworth is just thinks to himself, maybe that was too direct. You think?
Yeah, there's so many great, like of all the lines that in the Ace.
Oh yeah, I object, Your Honor. Why is that?
I was hoping to come up with something while I was
objecting. I did not. Anyways, I object. So the other time it's like, I object, Your Honor. That was objectionable.
Or the fact that he can't get any of his witnesses to say their name and occupation. And they always go on some sort of rambling spree when he's just like, name and occupation. And you get frustrated.
And it's always only Edgeworth. It only happens to him. Never any of the other prosecutors. Only Edgeworth.
And even because you even see that some of that happens with Blackquill, but Blackwill's just like name and occupation, and then they say it.
Well, even Franziska, some of them will try to go on a tangent. She just whips. She just whips them. Blackquill too. He just attacks them. Like, and it's just like they don't have time for this. But with Edgeworth, it's because he's just so stuffy, I guess. That it's just so funny.
He's too polite in a way to resort to violence. But then he has to deal with.
But he's also smarmy.
Yeah.
Even post character development, Edgeworth can be smarmy in the courtroom. Like he thrives on being smarmy. I think it's just like I almost have this theory that maybe he's not smarmy if somebody else would have been a defense attorney if he took on a case. But if it's Phoenix, suddenly he's like, ha ha ha, time to be really smarmy. Yeah. Like, let's be pompous.
He's smarmy because it's Phoenix.
Well, like I guess that's the language of their friendship. Like he just like, I'm gonna be pompous and try to humiliate you. And he was like, thanks.
Thanks, best friend.
Just I love him though. He's so memorable. I'm pretty sure, I don't even know how long we've been talking, but I'm sure we talked for a while about Edgeworth.
Yeah, I think we've talked more than enough about Edgeworth. Let's move on to the next one. Franziska.
Okay. Oh my.
Let's try not to talk as much, because I know both of us really like Franziska.
Well, thankfully, at least for the sake of time-wise, she hasn't been as many games, but also, unfortunately, Franziska needs to come back!
Yeah, it is one of the big disappointments that she wasn't in the new trilogy. She was mentioned in the DLC case for Spirit of Justice by Larry, and that's one of the only times where we actually get a reference to Franziska.
I could have sworn somebody else mentioned Franziska once, but granted they didn't say her name.
But it was talking with Larry's book. It was Little Franny and her.
Well, no, I couldn't remember if it was Dual Destiny or Spirit of Justice because I remember somebody else mentioned something. Because I remember Phoenix made either Phoenix made a reference to her or Apollo said I heard something once about blah blah blah, but he didn't. But it was obviously a reference to a case that Phoenix and Franziska were a part of. So I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Maybe.
Wait. Wasn't it a reference to the Big Berry Circus case?
It could have been, but
I think I remember something like that.
That could have been because I remember there was a vague reference to Franziska also being mentioned about that. Like unless I'm remembering it wrong, but still, I'm like Franziska needs to come back. Okay, so she and another prosecutor are tied for my second favorite prosecutor, and it's so funny. You would think because of another prosecutor on the list I initially hated because of how pompous they are. Granted, and then I turned around by the end of that game, but you would think Franziska would be a least favorite because if she's a lot like her dad, except more violent. But and then this is even before you suddenly realize Franziska's hidden depths at the end of Justice. No, from the get-go, I was instantly in love with her. I
think the difference between her and Manfred is that Manfred is like actually evil.
That's true. But Franziska's never killed anybody yet.
Yeah, Franziska, she's arrogant, but in the funniest way possible.
She's hilarious. That's I think the best way to put it. Like Manfred, we'll talk about him later, but because he's intentionally supposed to be despicable. Yes, Franziska is despicable and has despicable moments, and she has those moments where you kind of one up her in her despicable moments. You're like, yeah, take that. But you're like that with every prosecutor, actually. But it's just. The way it's more played for laughs with Franziska because she's so extra.
She's so over the top. I'm avant karma. I'm perfect. I'm literally the greatest thing to have ever graced this earth.
I mean, for crying out loud, you go from Edgeworth to a character that literally whips everybody in the room. She has a whip.
She's allowed to whip the judge.
It's so ridiculous, but and you feel sorry for Gumshoe the way she treats Gumshoe, but at the same time you can't help but laugh because if you're like,
it's so
how
over the
does
top.
A person like this exist where she treats her detective that's supposed to be on her lead case is like practically like he's a dog.
She calls him Scruffy too.
And when she's so ridiculous as she refers to everybody by their full name.
Phoenix, right?
Well, except for the judge, he's just, Your Honor, like, well, yeah, and Gumshoe, he's just Scruffy. And I'm like, but like even Edgeworth, somebody
Miles Edgeworth,
even somebody that she would have grown up with, sort of, kind of. There's a huge age difference, and I'm sure Edgeworth probably would have gone to like school way before he could have ever had much of an impact. But still, like the fact that they shared the same household and they were mentored by the same person, her father. Like you would think because of
there'd be something more casual.
You would think because there would be a slight history. No.
Miles Edgeworth.
She treats him the same way she treats everybody else. It's so funny. Like she's so funny. I just.
And it's funny because she doesn't even care about her dad. She doesn't care that he died.
I mean, she does care because if she's molded herself after him, but at the same time, Phoenix is like, this is revenge for your father. She's like, no, this has nothing to do with Papa. She's like, I'm going to beat you.
Because of Miles Edgeworth.
Well, and then it's focused on because then he finally beat her once, and then she's just like, Phoenix, I'm going to beat you. Yes. The only person who's ever defeated me. But the whole reason, her revenge, it was her revenge, not at Phoenix. Whenever she talks about I'm here to get revenge, she's saying it, declaring it to somebody who's not even in that country at the moment. She's basically like, and it will be broadcasted all over the world whenever and then you realize, she wants Edgeworth wherever he is to see this. She's like, you see that? You see that? I beat the attorney that beat you.
Get wrecked, Miles Edgeworth. It's like, Franziska, why?
She's so funny. Like, everything she does. Like,
and she's tsundere because you find out at the end of the game that she actually does care, and she actually, especially, being beaten and actually having to experience a slice of humble pie. It's like, she does actually.
Well, you find out a lot of that persona is kind of a mask, and that was the really, because I mean, she always was humorous to me, but then to find out that she's got a lot of hidden depths, and even though they never expand a whole lot on it, I'm told Investigations 2 does actually expand a little bit more on it, but not a whole lot. I'm told this, but again, I'll need to see a Let's Play of the emulator for it to know for sure, because I don't want to spoil myself to Investigations 2, because I'm told it's like an absolutely amazing game. Yeah. So I avoid a lot of that. But like just that one short little scene, it's amazing how a scene so quick and so short at the very end of the game, it transforms your entire opinion. I mean, because I already liked her character, but it really made me.
It made you care about her.
Really care about her. And it made me realize, wow, this character that I thought was, she's just, a really funny, extremely extra prosecutor.
She actually does have her own insecurities that she masks with her overabundance of arrogance.
And it's so jarring to see her, like, when I saw her sprite animation break down crying, it was so jarring because if she's always so haughty and so confident and just so in your face.
Yeah, and you see that moment where, Edgeworth has to basically,
like, what will you do now? Because now she's in a similar position that Edgeworth was at the end of the very first game, kind of like lost and unsure of what to do with themselves, kind of questioning everything that they've lived, that they've known, that they breathed. Like, it's who they were and as a part of their job. And now it's like, now they have to call everything that they've ever done into question. And it's like, how does one move forward? But then you realize, because what she says, how she's just like, I'm not my father, he was perfect. And then you realize, oh, so when Franziska kept talking about how I'm a von Karma, I'm perfect, that was all hot air. She was trying to convince herself she was perfect like her father, because she didn't...
She's trying to live up to that name.
And she's like, I was like, because I've recently replayed and beaten the Justice for All again in my replay, and just to hear her say, like, my father was a prodigy, I'm not like him, and I'm like, she became a prosecutor when she was 13 years old. How more prodigy can you be?
But Manfred treated her so terribly that she felt...
At least we assume, we don't know. And
well, no, but actually we do see in...
Well, we see a little bit in Investigations 1, but I mean, we don't see a whole lot, so you don't know a whole lot of her childhood.
But, but we do get a lot of implications, particularly with the fact that Manfred... He pits
Edgeworth and
Franziska against each other and has no, like, he doesn't care that she's his daughter. So
and 13 years old.
13 years old. Like, she's about to become a prosecutor at that point, and fine, whatever. And it's like, no wonder she felt like she wasn't important.
Well, and then there's the fact that she became a prosecutor at 13. I'm like, how, it makes you wonder, how much pressure was she under that she felt the need that soon to become a prosecutor? 13. Like, think about it. 13. I was sitting there listening to boy bands and watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And going to middle school and just thinking about, oh, did I remember to finish all of my homework? Crap, did I remember? Like, she was
an international prosecutor at that age.
She should be living out her teenage years normally, because when you meet her, she's 18 years old, the same age as Maya. She's Maya's age, so let's put that into perspective. Maya, the fun, easygoing, loving assistant who's kooky and all that fun stuff. They're the same age, but you notice radically different personalities. Granted, I know also because of different upbringings and because of, well, humans in general, all of us have different personalities, but the fact that Franziska acts so, well, when she's not being so completely ridiculous and extra, but she acts so much older than she actually is, compared to Maya, who acts like an actual teenager, like, it's actually kind of really tear-jerking.
Yeah.
Like, she's actually kind of really sad when you think about it. Like, you're like, wow, she's kind of a really tragic character. Like, she's lived in her father's shadow and convinced herself she'll never be as good as him. And the other tragedy of her is what she says to Miles, and she declares how she's like, I won't lose to you. She's like, I won't stay in your shadow forever. Like, so then you realize this whole thing, like, not only is her father on a pedestal, Edgeworth was on a pedestal, so you have to imagine... Here she is, the daughter of Manfred von Karma, prosecuting prodigy, so it's obviously expected she's going to follow in her father's footsteps. And then suddenly, out of the blue, here she is, a little kid, probably like 3 years old, because I'm sure she probably came straight out of the womb talking.
Yeah.
Because she's so ridiculously...
She comes out of the womb, fool.
Yeah, fool or objection.
Yeah, fool was her first word.
Objection, fools. But... So now you have this kid being brought home who's 7 years older than her. So it's already, her competition is older than her. So he's immediately going to get the leg up on her. So that's probably another reason why she was pressured probably to become a prosecutor sooner, because of, at that point...
Because, she and him came... She became a prosecutor, like... it was like a little after him, because she isn't a prosecutor yet, and she's like 12 or so in the flashback and investigations. So, yeah, she became a prosecutor, like, barely a year after Edgeworth.
Like, so she's, like constantly rushing to catch up to him. And so you have to realize, like, how much pressure that probably put under her, like, thinking, oh my gosh, and he's not even a blood relative, and her father is mentoring this kid that is...
And he becomes a prosecutor first. So
and he has a reputation that is equal in status to her father's, because he was told, as in the first game, they call him the demon prosecutor, a prosecuting prodigy, just like her father. So you, like, the amount of pressure, like, she would feel, not only being in her father's shadow, she feels like she's trapped in Edgeworth's shadow. And, like, and you really start to feel for this character, and then you realize, oh, that's why the way she is, and that's why she kind of lashes out too, because if you also realize, because at one part you would think, oh, she's probably just a spoiled kid who always got what she wanted. And, well, yes, technically, I'm sure Manfred probably just gave her whatever she wanted just to quiet her down, because you cannot see this man being paternal ever.
No.
And I'm like, but at the same time, the pressure she was put on her, and the fact that she had to become a prosecutor at the age of 13, so you think to yourself, she probably never really grew up. I mean, she grew up, but I mean, like...
She grew up way too fast. She never had a child, and
So it makes sense why she would lash out kind of childlessly and react when things don't go her way, because she's emotionally stunted, but in such contradicting ways. I mean, she's a contradiction. She claims that she's perfect, but she also feels that she's not perfect. She's a prodigy, but she's not a prodigy. And she's supposed to always win, and yet she lost 2 cases. I'm just like, that is so much to put on one character, just to know all these depths. Like,
and it's really amazing to me that her character was sort of a last-minute addition to Justice for All.
Yes, like, because it was originally going to be Edgeworth, and then they rewrote the game, and he rewrote the game quickly in, like, how many months?
It's like 2 months or something stupid like that.
And he made such an amazing character. When she came back in Trials and Tribulations, like, and when I first played Trials and Tribulations, I was cheering because of, first off, you have Franziska and Edgeworth facing off each other in court, which, as we spoke of in the Edgeworth section, just, yes, that was just fantastic. But then you notice she's slightly a little bit nicer, because even whenever Edgeworth basically points out that he's filling in for Iris's actual attorney, Phoenix Wright, because Francesca's like, I was under the impression I was going to be facing Phoenix Wright, and then Edgeworth was like, yes, well, considering he's at the hospital right now, I'm filling in for him, and then Francesca's like, hospital? And then Edgeworth kind of was like, yeah, he kind of, you know, fell down a burning bridge into like 20 feet into icy cold roaring rapids that have been known to kill nearly every person that have fallen into it. And you could do Francesca's just like, oh my gosh, like she was like actually legitimately concerned for Phoenix in that moment. Like, is he alive? Like, I was just like, wow. For a split second, Franziska, like, even though like she's not even Phoenix's, not even his friend.
Yeah.
Like she was like for a second like, oh wow, like that's actually horrible. Is he okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially that entire last case with Franziska is there.
Oh my gosh.
Especially when
investigating
with Phoenix. Yeah, that was
the best. That was the best. I love it.
And I love how she's acting like, you know, I'll beat you, Phoenix Wright, and he's just
she chooses to investigate with him.
And he's just like, but I've beaten you multiple times already.
But what's funny is, because this is before Godot comes back, but like, so it's operating under the fact that Franziska is still supposed to be the one who's supposed to be in charge and prosecuting this case. So Phoenix is investigating, and Franziska decides to just tag along and investigate with him. I'm like, so this is in her mindset. She's going to be facing Phoenix in court, yet she willingly chooses, I'm going to go investigate with my opponent. You have to wonder what is going on in her mind, but just the back and forth between Phoenix's and Francesca's interactions was just beautiful. And at the time, I was actually, like, I was telling him of an AU that I was considering, and granted, I didn't end up publishing it until this year, that into a fanfic. And in this AU, I have like an alternate universe where Phoenix is actually adopted and raised by Manfred von Karma.
Because the situation where with Phoenix and Edgeworth was switched, where
except
Phoenix
was actually adopted instead of Edgeworth, where he was just you know, basically the legal guardian, not really like adopting at all, like not at all. But So, but I give Phoenix and Franziska like a relationship, like of like of an actual brother and sister, or at least Franziska's way of being a sister because it's still Franziska. But as I was playing investigations, I mean not investigate, like trials and tribulations, when you're investigating, and then I'm getting all this interaction. And granted, he's played all those games before I had, and so I'm finally getting into trials and tribulations. And I told him already some stuff from my AU before, like in text messages. And then so as I was getting into trials and tribulations, I'm like, oh my gosh, Phoenix and Franziska investigating. This is perfect. This is beautiful. And he's like, I'm like, this is like just giving so much fuel to my AU fire. And he's just like, I know. He's like, when you sent me those texts, he's just like, all I was thinking about was trials and tribulation, but I didn't want to say anything. And I'm just like, you were just sitting on it. You're like, I can't wait till Erin like plays trials and tribulations. And then she could be like, Franziska!
I was waiting for you to catch up on the games.
Oh, I love Franziska. Just, oh gosh, her back and forth. Yes, of course, you have the fact that she whips people. That's hilarious. But then you have her ridiculous amounts of fool and different ways she says the word fool.
The foolishly foolish fool who foolishly fools.
Like just the overabundance of fool used in a sentence. I wish I could just pull up one right now. I don't have one saved.
I also love how absolutely tsundere she is about everything. It's like, she actually does care about Edgeworth, but she'll never say it.
No.
She has to crush Miles Edgeworth. And she actually respects Phoenix, but no, she must destroy him in court. It's just like, no. She doesn't actually get to be open about her feelings.
Well, even Phoenix referenced it, like whenever, even though, because he was still sick because of the cold and he had a high fever. And Franziska, I can't remember what Franziska said, but it's something basically along the lines of, just because I'm investigating with you doesn't mean we're friends or something and blah, blah, blah. Like, she's just being so openly aggressive and just constantly berating him.
We're not friends, Baka.
And Phoenix is just thinking to himself, maybe it's just the fever talking, but she's so openly hostile that it's almost kind of cute. And I'm just like, a tsundere. That's essentially what a tsundere is. Someone who is just overtly hostile, just to the point where it's actually kind of adorable.
Because they're trying so hard.
They're trying way too hard to be like, I don't care, you fool.
Baka.
It's just like, oh, I love Franziska. She's just so funny. And just, oh gosh, some of the funniest moments is like whenever Phoenix and Franziska were investigating. And like one of the moments is like whenever you go to the area, and granted, the reason you couldn't go in the area later in the game, you realize, that's where the actual scene of the crime took place, of the death of, if you've played the game, Misty. Misty. We think that's where the actual scene took place, but it's like gated off. But the fact that you like, if you go and you press the button to like examine it, and it says do not enter. And Franziska's like, let us go investigate Phoenix, right? And Phoenix is like, what? Didn't you read the sign? It says do not enter. And Franziska's like, don't you Americans just simply do whatever you want and say, whatever? Phoenix is like, no, that's not what we do. And then he thinks to himself, and who told you that?
And there's just Edgeworth sipping tea.
I'm like, thinks of every one of these moments where Phoenix is like, no, who told you that? And I'm like, now I'm imagining to myself, Edgeworth is probably just feeding lies to her about Americans. Just like thinking to himself, ha! Just so she can look like a fool. Because then later on, like whenever you see like that tapestry, like, or whatever, that scroll, and it's like smeared in gravy, and then Franziska's like, I see. Here in America, when you run out of paint, you use gravy as a substitute. Fascinating. And Phoenix is like, no!
How do you draw that conclusion?
She's so ridiculous. I love her so much. Or like my other favorite moment is, I think it was the incinerator I was inspecting. I still remember this because it was one of my favorite moments. Because even though you can't see Phoenix's face when you're in investigation mode, I could just feel Phoenix's like just so done moment. Like I could just feel like he was like, if he was staring at like you, he would be like staring into the camera, and then it would zoom in on him like in The Office. Like I could just feel it because it was like Phoenix like says something, Franziska says something about the incinerator, and then Phoenix is like, yeah, wouldn't you find that a bit strange, Franziska von Karma? Like, because she always calls people by their full name, and so Phoenix was basically like, I'll just do what you do all the time, like just for fun. And then Franziska's just like, listen here, Phoenix Wright. It is impertinent to call people by their full name. And you're just like, Phoenix doesn't even say anything. He doesn't even think anything. It's just kind of like, ... And I'm just like, in that moment, I could just feel like if Phoenix was just being like, really? He's so done. And I was just like, I was laughing so hard. I'm like, oh, Franziska, the cognitive dissonance right here. Oh gosh, I love her in investigations when she shows up, and specifically in Turnabout Airlines. It was great.
She's so desperate to like defeat Miles Edgeworth that when he's like, oh yeah, he's accused of murder. Aha! You're a murderer, Miles Edgeworth.
And even Edgeworth is like, Franziska, do you really think I'm actually guilty of this? She's just like, well, no, but the evidence points to you, so I'm gonna say it to you.
Gosh, she's so.
And I'm just like, really? And even then, whenever it's like, then suddenly it's Rhoda that's being framed for the crime. And then Franziska is so 100%, aha, it has to be her. And then Edgeworth is like, I'm not so sure. Franziska is just like, you fool! Must you drag this out? And just the fact that they're, like, it's like with Phoenix, like whenever Edgeworth is investigating with Franziska, but they're like side by side, but antagonistic. And just, she's just constantly, I still remember the moment, and it's really hilarious whenever, I love choosing the wrong options too.
With
Franziska when you're as Edgeworth, because oh gosh, it's so funny, especially whenever she's like, very well, then what was the cause of death? And I can't remember the options, but I remember one of the options was like, I think like something to the akin of strangulation. Granted, the correct answer is he fell to his death. And that's where the bruises came from. And I was like, but I purposely chose strangulation because it was like Edgeworth was having a Phoenix moment. He's just like, haha, the bruises came from the fact that someone strangled him. And then he fell down and got the bruises. And they're just like, suddenly he thinks to himself, wait, no, that's not right. And even though he's like, wait, that can't be, and then immediately Franziska just, whoop-ah! He's just like, ah! He's just like, okay, wrong answer. I'm just like, I love doing wrong answers around Franziska just because she just gets angry and whips him. And it's always funny to like present your prosecutor badge to Franziska. You're just like, why are you showing me this? It's my prosecutor badge. Yes, and why? I just wanted to show you it. Just like he's like suddenly being all pompous, and he's just like, what do you think about that? And she just sits there, stony face, and then just whoop-ah! just like, yes! And then of course Edgeworth, no! His stupid no, but the best is the flashback case with little Franziska and Edgeworth.
She's so precocious.
Oh gosh, like I remember soon as I saw that, like as you're playing as Edgeworth and suddenly I see the question mark, that I see the little lines, Papa, how could you do this? And I was just like, Papa, I'm like, is it? And then suddenly she comes right again, I'm like, it is! It's little Francie!
She's even smaller. She's even smaller than she normally is, and even angrier.
It's even angrier. The smaller the Franziska, the angrier she gets. Oh, I love small, tiny, angry Franziska.
And she's Edgeworth's investigating partner, but she's just like.
And she's got a riding crop instead of a whip.
She's just like trying to beat him, and I'm like, but you're not even a prosecutor yet. Like,
oh, she's so funny and so cute. I love her. Oh, she's so cute. She needs to come back. Please, Capcom.
Bring
her back. And Gumshoe. And Luna Sky.
Yeah. Bring them back.
All of them. Just, okay, but yes, we could just...
Go on. We can go on forever.
We could gush forever because Franziska is just absolutely wonderful. But here's another character who's absolutely wonderful.
So this topic ran a little long. We talked quite a bit about Franziska and Edgeworth. So, much like my Voltron topic, this will be split into 3 parts. Part 2 will be put up right there when I get that posted. So, if there's anything you want to comment about anything we talked about, anything about Edgeworth and Franziska, please comment below. And of course, thank you for watching.